Okay, welcome everybody to the Water Quality Monitoring Collaboration Network webinar. Today's presentation is on citizens monitoring and watersheds flowing to the Monterey National Marine Sanctuary. Presenters today are Bridget Hoover and Emanuelson, and they're from the Monterey National Marine Sanctuary. Bridget is the director of the Water Quality Protection Program, and Lisa is part of the education team. So, for ado, go ahead.
Great. This is Lisa Emanuelson, and I'll actually be giving the presentation today. Did someone John? No?
Doing a lot.
Oh. So we're just going to go through three of the programs that we have here focused on water quality, and so we'll get started. Can I do that one? Okay. So Monterey National Marine Sanctuary is part of the National Marine Sanctuary System. National parks, water in places where it's harder for people to visit, but there are areas that are protected, by our federal government, and so we're all working to protect watersheds and that kind of stuff. But obviously that has an impact in the ocean. I didn't expect that. Can you see the image?
No.
Well, that's not so good. So anyways, okay, so the sanctuary is roughly 7,000 square nautical miles. There's a huge area of the coastline. We go all the way from Cambria down south up to the Marin headlands north. There's some amazing features. We have a huge canyon. The joint is 12,000, over 1,000 feet deep. We have just added an area called the Davidson Seamount, which unfortunately you can't see, but it's an undersea volcanic mountain. It's just amazing. A lot of fish, a lot of birds, and of course a lot of marine mammals that are here. But most importantly for us on the phone call are the watersheds that actually drain into the sanctuary. So directly drained watersheds is about roughly the same size as the sanctuary itself, is 7,000 square miles. And then we did an extra 19,000 square miles because the San Francisco Bay gets drained. There's so much that goes into the area, which eventually ends up out in our sanctuary as well. So we included that. So 26,000 square miles are draining into the sanctuary. So obviously we have some quality concerns. We're going to talk about our Urban Watch, which is our dry weather monitoring program that happens in Pacific Grove and also in Monterey here on the peninsula, and then up in Capitola, which is just south of Santa Cruz. That's actually managed by the Coastal Watershed Council. And one of the things I should say here at the very outset is that all these programs I talk about we rely so heavily on our partnership, and Coastal Watershed Council is just such a huge partner to make sure that the programs that we're running have the scope and the consistency and everything. So much of this stuff couldn't happen without them. But anyway, so Capitola's Urban Watch program is coordinated and managed by the Coastal Watershed Council. And the program begins in June, and it goes until the first rains of the winter season. So we're obviously, after this last huge storm that we have, are done with Urban Watch, and then up again next June. I'll talk about First Flush. I actually use my abbreviations, but First Flush is our first major rainstorm of the winter season. We collect samples as part of a time series, so we'll do a initial sampling, and then 30 minutes later we'll do a second sampling. And Snapshot Day is our one-day water quality event that happens on the first day in May. For 2010, it's going to be on May 1st. That's an incredible span of area also that gets monitored. San Luis Obispo County all the way up to in San Mateo County. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So for Urban Watch, it's been happening since 1997. I mentioned it's conducted in Capitola through the CWC and then locally here for Monterey and Pacific Grove. Overall, we have about 57 volunteers, and we monitor 16 separate sites, and of course that's through the 3 different areas. And the way the program is orchestrated is that each location will be monitored, or ED will be monitored during 2 weeks of the month, and it's monitored twice during 1 week, so it's 4 times the course of a month that particular location will be monitored. And what we're looking for with our field testing is air and water temp, pH, conductivity, and then we also monitor our flow. So we look at how deep the flow is, how wide the flow is, and then whether the pipe or whatever drainage that we're looking at. Most of them are all pipes. But what those, does it look like it was with their air flow? So we're looking at wetted width to tell us something about whether the flow was maybe higher earlier. We also collect samples at each of our locations that we then test using a Lamont storm drain kit for detergents, chlorine, turbidity, color, and then also odor. And here on the peninsula in PG and Monterey, we also have a set of instruments that we use to test for ammonia and orthophosphate. And one of the things I should say about the meters, and actually Debbie and I, we were talking about this earlier, meters, the storm drain kit is fairly easy for volunteers to try and do. There's some toxic chemicals, and do you guys image? The photo of the woman? Good.
Yeah.
So you'll see that this is Teresa, and she's wearing gloves, and we have containment trays and all that kind of stuff. And there are some pretty toxic chemicals. In this particular test for detergents, there's toluene. So Eddie, at the beginning of the season, everybody's trained on how to do the different tests and some of the safety measures that we have. And I say that the storm kit is fairly easy for the volunteers to actually use. We have too many problems. During that first run, everybody's got to kind of be watched and everybody gets trained. But it's pretty easy. It's kind of cookbook. For HANA instruments for ammonia and orthophosphate, we've actually had some interesting results over the course of the season this year. And CW doesn't actually use these particular instruments. We only use them here on the peninsula. And so we've actually been really trying to orchestrate our results with lab standards to make sure that everything's copacetic that way. It's a little bit more challenging, I'd say, for the volunteers to try and operate the HANA instruments. Is kind of out of it all. Okay. So now we have dry run in our first flush. Dry run is our dry weather monitoring that we do prior to the first flush to give us a good sort of idea of, the baseline, whether there's flow during the dry weather season, that kind of stuff. So for the first flush, we monitor areas from Monterey up in San Mateo County all the way down to Carmel, down to sort of the mouth of Carmel Valley. This that I'm showing you guys right now is from the Nate site, so you can kind of get an idea of where the sites are. We have a couple extra sites that not on this map, that we monitored for 2009. And sites actually in Santa Cruz that were taken off of the list due to issues with the city.
It was just one.
Just one, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so this is the breadth of, it's a huge, although it's a couple 100 miles of coastline monitoring. And these are all storm drain outfalls flowing directly or most directly into creeks and rivers that either go directly into the ocean or outfalls that lead directly into the ocean immediately. This year was on September 19th. Thankfully, we actually get to choose the day that the dry run happens, but we chose a day that was kind of a busy day, which maybe in the future we might want to change. September 19th, if you guys remember, was also coastal cleanup day, and we had a number of different events happening with the sanctuary, so it was kind of a busy day. But we monitor 50 sites, and we take a single sample for any of the sites that have water that's flowing. And those 50 sites are all the same sites that we monitor for our first flush as well. And, out of the sites, say for easily half the sites, there's no water flowing during the dry run. But it's a great way for us to first see whether there's water flowing, but also for the volunteers to see their site during the daylight hours. Which, when you actually are out there for first flush, it's usually in the nighttime. It's a little stormy. It can be a little disorienting. So it's nice for the volunteers to have that, that remembrance of what it was like during the bright daylight. And we're monitoring all the way from Monterey, which is in San Mateo County, down to here in Monterey County, at the mouth of the Carmel Valley. And we do field measurements for water temperature, pH, conductivity, and transparency. And of course, pH and transparency are things that we do for the drum. But when we get to the first flush, we only do those two tests if it's actually daylight hours, which is pretty rare. We take samples for E. coli, Enterococcus, metals, the copper, zinc, lead, turbidity, nitrate, and orthophosphate. And those are all tested at local labs. For this year, it's actually at one local lab that we're using that's here in the Monterey area. Except for the bacteria, which because of the whole time on bacteria, they go to their closest lab. And so the San Mateo County samples, those went to the San Mateo County Health Department. And I think Debbie, yours went to the Santa Cruz County Health Department, right?
Ours all went down to MBAS as well.
Yeah. So the whole time just means that they have to get out to a lab and be tested, a certain amount of time. The first flush this year happened on October 13th, and I think we all mobilized on that particular date. Maybe you guys didn't mobilize on the 12th, did you?
No, we volunteered at 4:10 on the 13th a.m.
Yeah, and I called my volunteers at about 5:45 a.m. So we all got to go on the same day, which actually is pretty unusual. A lot of times we'll get storms that kind of miss the Monterey area but hit Santa Cruz and San Mateo counties pretty significantly. And then here in Monterey area, we actually have to wait for another storm event. And the events that we're looking for are ones that are pretty significant, that are going to give us some sheeting rain. What we do is we watch the weather, make sure the storm has enough energy to continue, because these samples that we're taking for first flush, we're doing 2 time series separated by 30 minutes. We need to know that the storm's going to keep going with enough energy to have a good go for at least 30 minutes. And we're looking for conductivity that's below 1,000 microsiemens in that storm. And the reason that we're doing that is we want to know that we're actually sampling not just any kind of groundwater, which there may be or may not be at a particular location. We want to know that we're actually sampling that rainwater. So 1,000 microsiemens is what we're looking for. And what we're trying to do is really hit that storm, hit the collection right rising sort of the hydrograph, so that we know that we're there as soon as we can be there with our volunteers that are collecting samples. We don't want to wait too long until things kind of get more dilute, so we're trying to hit that rising hydrograph area. Do you have any questions about either one of those 2 programs?
This is Ann Kitashima in Morro Bay. I have a question about that 1,000 microsiemen number. I'm curious where it came from.
And I'm looking.
Hi, Ann.
Hey.
So we do, and actually, Coastal Watershed Council does it a little bit different, but these are sites that we monitor during the dry weather, and our conductivity is typically around 2,000 microsiemens. And so what we're looking for, like Lisa said, is to know that we're not getting just that background runoff. But it's really, we're looking for less than 1,000. So what we tell our volunteers is when you first get out to your site, check conductivity, see what it is, and if it's 1,000 or less, then tell them go ahead and start monitoring. And typically, when just getting a rain event, it's really low. It's 100, 200 microsiemens. But again, we're just trying to know that we're in the rain and not just the typical background. And Debbie can step, but I think what they do is kind of take their typical background conductivity levels and divide that in half. And that's essentially what we've done there to get that 1,000.
Okay.
So this is Heidi. What's up the background kind of here?
Lots of minerals. It's the different salts. Potassium.
That we want to get past the initial washdown of those, or is that just present period?
Well, it's basically when the flush comes through, when rain comes through, the conductivity really drops.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Ellie, Volunteer Monitor newsletter.
Uh-huh.
I'm just wondering, we can talk about this afterwards if this is too complicated a question for right now, but, there's an article in the Volunteer Monitor a few years ago about the Russian River first flush, and so far it sounds pretty similar, and I'm just wondering, is it the same, or did you make some modifications, or did you sort of learn some things that worked a better, different way?
A lot of this was a brainchild of Revital Katz-Nelson, and so we worked really closely with her initially to develop these different protocols, and she also worked with them. They started several years later.
Oh, I see.
So I imagine the programs are very similar.
Okay.
And so ago, we did coordinate even, as far as when we were mobilizing.
I see. Okay.
So they would imagine they would be pretty similar.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to talk about Snapshot Day. This year, this 2009 year, this was our 10-year anniversary of Snapshot Day. So we tried to really have a bigger for recruitment and a little bit more splash for everybody. So here, I worked with REI and our Snapshot Day event at our new REI store, which actually worked out really well because it happened to be the first, it could have, you could take ways. It happened to be the first day of their annual sale. So it was, obviously you can see from the image there's a whole people that were there as Snapshot Day volunteers. And thankfully we were there before the store opened. And then once the store opened, all the volunteers were gone. And so it being a great way for us to advertise for new volunteers, to advertise just for folks to understand what's happening in their watersheds. So that was actually it was a great way to get some more coverage. But this was our 10-year anniversary that we had this last year. And so you can see that we are, again, monitoring areas that are draining into the sanctuary and then also beyond, because we have some areas down in the San Luis Obispo region that do monitoring with Ann Kitajima. So we have 185 sites, and this year we have 224 volunteers. Again, this image is from 2008, so there's a few sites in the very southern part of the Santa Lucia watershed that were really monitored in 2009 because we had so many volunteers. It was actually a bumper crop for volunteers this year, which was really great. We had 4 hubs, one up in Santa Cruz, one in Monterey, one in San Luis Obispo, or in the Camp area, and then again one up in the San Mateo area. So, and again, I'm sorry. Yeah, and again, we couldn't do this without a lot of partners, and some of you guys are on the phone now. So PWC, Coastal Watershed Council, is just critical. The Monterey Volunteer Monitoring Program, and then we also have a lot of folks from the Upper Salinas River, Las Tablas RCD that helped us out. And with each of these folks that are listed, obviously there's so many more people that we could have listed because there's so many people that really helped to pull this program off. But I felt as though with these 3 groups, you got a lot of coordinating of your own volunteer groups and acted as sort of, your own group in order to help pull this off. So that actually really helped a lot. And so obviously you guys are on the slide. But there's so many more people. There's so many folks that help us out with this whole event. So, and it's a great event. We've had 10 years of data. We're able to really see some trends that show some problem areas. So it's with our field measurements. We're looking at temperature, pH, conductivity, transparency, and dissolved oxygen. And transparency for our local folks is a little bit different than the folks that are in the Santa Cruz or even in the San Mateo area, because they're looking at turbidity as opposed to transparency. A little bit different kit that they're using. And then collecting samples for analysis of nitrate, orthophosphate, E. coli, and Enterococcus. And a lot of those sample bottles come here to our local lab, as well as going to labs locally, local to hubs, I should say. And what we're sampling are just so diverse. You know, up in the upper shot, you see just this beautiful creek area, wonderful coverage by the trees and the plants. It's just a beautiful riparian area. And then lower shot, you see a typical site in the Salinas Valley, or in the lower Salinas Valley, and actually this is in Salinas City. This is the irrigation ditch that flows through the city, and then eventually empties out into the back of Moss Landing Harbor. And I mean, it's just, there's houses on one side of the ditch, and then there's ag on the other side of the ditch. And there's very little vegetation. Obviously, it looks as though they've done some herbicide and try and remove any of the vegetation. And of course, you know, the things that came up in our workshop, in our workshop that we had last week, was farmers are really struggling with food safety issues and vegetative buffers and that kind of stuff. And this is obviously a real problem for them. Sites they run the gamut, and I always laugh. You know, when I first started volunteering for this program years ago, Bridget sent me to sites that look a lot like the lower image, and I always said, you know, can I go someplace really nice? I mean, I've been doing this program for a long time, and one year these volunteers came back and told me about all the poison oak that they saw, and that pretty much convinced me I needed to be in the other in the sites that don't have a lot of vegetation. So
Lisa, this is this a big contributor to? You said it dumps out to the end of back of Moss Landing Harbor. Is this a big contributor to why it's harbor is just so nasty?
Yeah, a lot of different things that run into it. And there's not a lot of circulation that happens in there. Yes, there is water that dumps in to the back of Moss Landing from a couple different sources.
Oh, okay.
There's a number of different, you know.
Okay, you can go on. I'm sorry, I was just curious.
But you know, it's all part of the puzzle. It's all part of the puzzle.
Thanks.
Okay. So logistics, and this is kind of been, you know, talking about, you know, Deb and I at the beginning of the year, we start talking about our training sessions that we're going to have, and kind of backing the calendars up from there. We're sure that we have one training per region, and we kind of schedule those at the beginning of the year. Meaning that obviously Snapshot Day is the first Saturday in May. We also schedule our calibrations, so we get our equipment that we're going to have, and we actually are calibrating them at one time. We usually have we have you know, a bottle or a couple bottles of actual calibration solutions. So we share everything. Because this is such a huge effort, because there's so many sites and teams, the team goes to a number of different sites, so you can kind of cut down on having to have 185 sets of equipment. But we have a number of different teams, so we actually have to borrow equipment from various places, and one of the places that we get our conductivity meters is from A. Wagner at the EPA. Of course, you know, in the beginning of the year, we start talking to partners, trying to make sure that everybody's got it on their radar, that this is coming up, and talking about when we're going to do trainings in their area, when they would like our help to do trainings, that kind of stuff. And about 1 month out from the actual event, we start putting in our print ads, depending upon what our media plan is for this event. We might do radio and print ads and all kinds of listservs, obviously. Do outreach for these, to recruit volunteers for these events. The things I noticed for this last year, I actually went to a number of junior college and college classrooms and a number of professors that I know through other activities that I've done. And so I went and talked to the classes and found that that was actually our best recruitment to get people out. And it's great because it's a one-day event. There's a training beforehand, usually the week or 2 weeks before. So it's a relatively minimal commitment for folks. It's great for the professors and instructors to give their students extra credit. So that's just the best. That was the best way that we got people out, and so that's really wonderful. So we'll do our trainings about a month out, no more than a month out. You don't want there to be just time between the time that you're training your volunteers, obviously, and the time that you're actually doing your water collection. And typically we've done one per region. So I had one in San Mateo County, one in Santa Cruz area, and then one in the Monterey area, and then one down in Cambria for down that area. And then some folks, they obviously travel. The folks from the Upper Salinas River, Las Tablas, RCD, they came into the one in Cambria. So it actually worked out well. So we do calibration 2 to 3 weeks out. We do all of our equipment at one time. And one of the things that's great about this program is that everybody's using the same protocols. We all have the same data sheet, things going into a database. And like I said, we're all pretty much using the same equipment except for transparency. So those of us here in the Monterey County and using transparency tubes, and then Debbie and her folks from CWC, as well as the folks up in San Mateo County, are using Data-D. So we are using different labs to do our analysis of our samples, but the labs, to our knowledge, are all using the same methods. In order to try and minimize any kind of variability between the labs, we actually do a thing called splits. So any sample, so a certain number of samples that we have that we've taken, say, Monterey County area, we'll try and make sure that those go up to the lab that the San Mateo County folks are using, and then Santa Cruz will also do the same thing for the two labs we have, the Monterey County and the San Mateo County. So there's a lot of shifting of extra samples and make sure the labs are all staying relatively on the same, giving us the same results, and doing our same duplicates and blanks we would normally do on top of that. You can see from our results, so E. coli for 2008, and we're still working on our 2009 maps with GIS. Our GIS person has been out with another project recently. But it's interesting to see, here, we can look over time and see very similar results for, certain areas. Our E. coli, here's nitrate. With E. coli, the bigger the red dot, the more problematic it is. And then what we do is we combine all of our all results, and we look at if it has over the water quality objective for any of the parameters that we're measuring, for 3 parameters, then that gets listed as an area of concern. It can be things not just from the lab results, but also from our field data.
Who listed is that?
So that's just us.
Okay.
That's just our classification.
Okay.
And you can see here, again, our areas of concern map only goes up to 2008, but you can see here that there's an average of 2001 to 2007, and then also 2008. And there's hotspot areas that we have. That's no surprise when you look back at the orthophosphate and nitrate and E. coli maps. But the Salinas Valley, lower in the Salinas Valley, closer towards the mouth, the Pajaro Valley is also kind of a hotspot, and then the Bolsa Nueva watershed, which encompasses El Flu, is definitely a little bit of a hotspot as well, based on our exceedances of our water quality objectives in 3 parameters. Yeah, and here, I mean, this is something that's, that's what I was talking about earlier is, the trends that we see. This is something that it's not that we are just finding, but this has been consistent that we've had over the years, shown us that, yeah, these are typically hot spots. And so it's not just based upon one year necessarily. It's these are consistent trends that we're actually seeing. So what day? Obviously, we have 10 years of data, which is great. We can see the trends. We can also get a baseline for what's going on. This is one of the best ways that we have to get volunteers out into their watersheds and to understand kind of what's happening. This is just a great way. Like I said, it's a minimal involvement. There's usually about a 4-hour training evening, training period, and then it's another, 4 hours or so on the actual event day. So it's an 8-hour involvement, which is great for a lot of people, and it's scheduled. It's not like something like First Flush, where you never know when it's going to happen, and you never know what time it's going to happen. But this is a great way for folks to get involved. I always couch it as, this is a great way to find out what's happening in your watersheds and to see places that you probably never knew existed. Even if it's one of those reclamation ditches in Salinas, lots of people never give those kinds of areas a thought. And so this is a great way to get people kind of to be aware of what's happening around them. And our data is added to data that's used for 303D listings. So it's a way to be able to contribute to, the greater, the great whole of data that's out there, which is really wonderful for folks to feel like they're participating in. Paro, Salinas, Bolsa Nueva watersheds. We have talked about doing some upstream monitoring, including a PR analysis, and we've actually used PCR, which is it's a way to detect human, what they call bacterioids that are in human waste. It's something that we've done here in PG and done at the lab in Santa Cruz, and we've gotten some interesting and actually what I think are good results. Talked about doing that. We've also talked about having more folks participate in our Agricultural Water Quality Alliance, where the farmers actually learn about using less additives onto their fields, using less water, that kind of stuff. And also, obviously, resident outreach is such a huge part of what needs done. But it's one of those things that's just such a big task. I'm not sure if anybody really has ever entirely tackled it. And of course, future ideas, love to try and coordinate our day or to find out what other programs are doing that is a Snapshot Day-like program around our same date. Back in, 2003, we had a statewide event, which was great because, everybody around the state was doing Snapshot Day, or coastwide, was doing Snapshot Day, and it was just a great way for folks to get involved. Their information all went into the same database. It's good for us to be able to have that incredible amount of information. And like I said, it's a great way for folks to understand what's happening. So if they are participating in something that's happening statewide, there's a little bit more pull for them, I believe. So, and that's have questions.
Oh, this is Lee again. Who's speaking?
This is Liz.
Okay. Snapshot data that I know about, is if there's not as much emphasis on data quality as you have. You're talking about split samples and labs and standardizing equipment and 4 hours of training. Others I've heard of are sort of more simple, and typically people kind of say, well, we don't really care about the data, we're just trying to get people out there. And, they might not have any training, and they might just hand them some kind of really simple kit. So I'm interested in the fact that you seem to feel that data is worth something.
Yeah, I think, with so many programs that we operate here at the sanctuary, I mean, obviously obviously, I couldn't go to 185 sites and take a sample. So, I mean, that would take me a long time. And I think that volunteers, you know, if you express to them how important this information is, they rise to the occasion, absolutely, and they can collect good data.
I know that's true for routine monitoring, but I guess other things, I don't know, even like, or maybe I'm thinking of bigger projects like the Secchi Dip-In or World Monitoring Day or things like that. It's as if maybe because they're so big, maybe you have more control over yours because you're actually, you know, have much more standardization, I guess, and more, you know, more training. And
because we have folks that are local to the different regions, you know, it's more of a personal connection people have with Debbie at the CWC or me here in Monterey or Ann down in Monterey. So I think that personal connection really helps for people to understand that this is an important program. And I don't know, Bridget, do you have anything?
Well, I was just going to say, Ellie, this is Bridget, and I think at least on the Central Coast, we've been, you know, over the last 10 years, really striving for the best possible data we can have from these volunteer programs. Really a lot of effort into the quality assurance plans and the protocols and the standardization, and I think that's what, you know, we've been working with the state board over the last year and a half, where we're really trying to develop that throughout the state. And part of the reason for this call and kind of sharing the Snapshot Day story was because we do it in 2003, and we did spend a lot of time on quality assurance and standardization, and I think, you know, it is a great opportunity for the volunteer programs or state to work towards something, a program, you know, of this sort, you know, a snapshot day. And so I think that we really want the volunteer data to be used, and it's really underutilized right now.
Yeah.
They're like the World Monitoring Day and the Secchi Dip-In. You know, those I think have different intents. Like
They do.
I think that's more just an educational effort, but we want the volunteer monitoring, at least on the Central Coast, to be more than that.
And you feel that just one day a year still have to yield if you pay attention to QA/QC and everything.
Yeah. Well, and like Lisa said, you know, it's been used by the regional board. One data point obviously isn't enough to list a site, but there have been sites that have been monitored by the CCAMP program that they didn't quite have enough data to list it, but when they incorporated the other data, then that was enough. So that's one situation. By combining data sets, there was enough information. And you can also tell by looking at that areas of concern map that consistently the same sites, you know, are problems year after year, even with that one data point showing the trend. And hopefully with all of the efforts going to watersheds, you know, we're going to start to see those areas of concern go away. But it absolutely demonstrates that one data point a year can definitely trend. Granted, it's been 10 years, you know. So.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's good that it's been 10 years. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Greg Pepping from the Coastal Watershed Council. Can I chime in on that as well? Thing is that we can chime in on this as well because I'm new and she has a lot more history. But I think it is important to focus on the intent, and this is rather than just mobilizing and getting people to get their wet. It is a data collection, and if you focus on EPA or standard methods, other standard methods, and then a QAP that's state board approved, then you can have, and you could shoot holes in it especially if you didn't like the data, you might shoot some holes in it. But if you follow those protocols, then very sound, really. And the thing is that for counties and cities, we can show that the sound data and to get one point, like you're saying, is it worthwhile to have one shot a year, for example, or something like that? Go to cities and counties that maybe with technically volunteer-led monitoring programs, we can actually get more data at a cheaper cost than we thought. I mean, it's expensive to send stuff to for sure, but it's sustainable to know more about our watersheds, and that's one of the things we do when we have meetings with folks and drawing up budgets and things. So I just wanted to throw it in.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thanks, Lisa, for that presentation, and thanks, Bridge, for volunteering to do the presentation for us.
Volunteer.
Yeah. So anyway, I just have a few updates. The November 18th webinar for genetic testing analysis for cyanobacteria blooms will be rescheduled for after the first of the year sometime. The presenter couldn't make it on November 19th. So we won't have a webinar for November 19th. The next will be December 3rd, and that will be on aquatic invasive species, and Eric Burrs will be talking about that. As of the first of the year, Eric Burrs will be taking over as the facilitator for these meetings. Very good. He is the coordinator for the Clean Water team at the State Board. So, and we're still looking for topic subjects. If anybody has anything they're interested in, please email us, okay?
Well, I was just going to ask, I don't know how many more people joined in on the call, but is there any other programs out there that are on the line that do Snapshot Days? I was thinking we could kind of have a little dialogue about kind of differences in the programs or similarities.
Today?
Yeah, but I don't know if anybody else is on the line that...
And I'm surprised you guys can't get the people's list, the list of names on the... I don't know. So Chris Colburn is on. Debbie's on. Eva, I'm sorry. Heidi. Crowley. Larry Freeman from USGS. Stephen.
We can actually see that list, Melanie.
I'm pretty on it because I didn't have time to do the visual part, so I'm just listening.
Okay.
This is Ellie at the volunteer monitor.
Anybody else just listening?
Yes, I'm listening. Just listening.
Okay.
This is Stephen McCord. I'm with Walker Associates in the Central Davis, and I was doing some work with the city of Elk Grove in the southern edge of Sacramento County last year. So we did the during the Snapshot Day, and again, we did one in fall of last year. Volunteers go out, and we had what it's called from EPA, just a simple. They come in a little canister.
The water quality monitoring.
Yeah, right. World Water Monitoring Day. That's it. So we didn't in the spring and the fall. We used those kits along with field, regular electronic sensors and all to see how accurate those were and that sort of thing. That was 1 year or twice in one year sort of thing, and that was it for this project. But the city and some volunteers are interested in carrying that on.
What did you find out about the accuracy of those kits?
They're reasonable. They weren't off, but the accuracy is the precision isn't so good. You get plus or minus 20%. They were always within the 20%ish, or whatever the sort of precision was, but that's about to get out of them.
And I'm sorry, where are you from?
I'm with Larry Walker Associates. We're a consulting firm based in Davis, but it's for the city of Elk Grove. That's in Sacramento County. So,
yeah.
But I don't know. We may do some follow-on work with that. It depends on sort of volunteer interest and that sort of thing. But I think I certainly appreciated the messages about the quality control and that sort of thing. We may work with like a high school group that would, the teacher would carry this on year after year, so there would be some continuity and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And some others.
Since I don't have the screen part, can you tell me who I should call for follow-up information on this? This is Ellie again. I know Bridget Hoover.
So you can call Bridget, or you can call myself. My name is Lisa Nielsen, and my number is 831-674-2227. Where are you from?
Well, I live in San Francisco, but I'm the editor of a publication called the Volunteer Monitor that's actually a national publication. And Bridget knows about it.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Yeah. Okay, for article ideas.
Okay.
And then for the next issue is a little bit open-ended compared to most. Most of them have more of a strict theme. But this one, it's just kind of going to be accomplishments and good ideas. I mean, it's sort of, in a way, it's sort of a grab bag of just, miscellaneous articles that I have that haven't necessarily fit into the topic. So I'm just going to submit to this issue. So this is a good opportunity to just to cover. It seems like something other people in the country could learn something from. And I think I'm thinking maybe they would be interested in either Urban Watch or Snapshot Day. Although I probably have to think a little bit more or find out a little bit more about how similar or different they are from what other people are doing in other parts of the country. But they certainly seem like potentially interesting.
Yeah, that sounds. We'd love to talk to you.
Okay.
So, is your publication only for scientific monitoring for volunteers, or is it your programs period for?
It's water monitoring.
Okay.
I've heard of it. It's been published for 20 years. It's funded by a grant from the EPA, and it's national. It's really the national publication about volunteer water monitoring.
Cool. Thank you.
So, people on the call that haven't heard of it? Wait, who's that?
Stephen McCord was talking a minute ago.
You heard of it?
Yep.
Uh-huh. And it has.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, you haven't?
I'm familiar with it, but I don't know if I've actually read it.
Oh, okay.
And this is Heidi, and I've never heard of it. So, call again?
It's called the Volunteer Monitor.
Okay. Great.
And it's very easy to find through Google if you just put in Volunteer Monitor newsletter and EPA, because they've got all it'll take you to the EPA website, and they've got all the back issues there. There's 35 issues going back to 19. They're on the web, but there's issues going back to 1993, and then there's more issues before that aren't on the web.
This is Debbie, and we actually received the Volunteer Monitor, so we try to read it when we get the chance. We always have it available for ourselves, our interns, staff.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's a good product to put out there because it shows that there are other people out monitoring, people that.
Well, not only that, but I mean, hopefully it'll give. I mean, it's really aimed at program coordinators to help them communicate with each other, so that somebody in Florida is doing something that might be a great idea for somebody in Oregon, but never know that, and so it's kind of tries to be a way to network everybody together and give them a way to talk to each other.
Yeah, well, and it's actually helpful that your newest issue, your Fall 09, on page 11, the macro invertebrate monitoring.
Uh-huh.
Looking at that and looking at those spoons, going, oh, this could be great for our school program.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good example of what you're saying right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if other people do snapshots that they take as seriously in terms of the rigorousness of the data. I mean, maybe there are, but my question is that other snap days that I've heard of have not gone as far as you have in terms of really trying to have good data quality assurance. And so that's something that might be worth putting out there to other people. That, hey, you actually maybe you can get better data than you thought you could. Kind of a message.
That actually, I mean, what I was kind of hoping for today was if some of the other groups, because it's the group that we worked with for the co-ed event, actually followed similar protocols, and a lot of them are still doing it. So I was hoping like the county coast keepers, and I know they do snapshot in Tahoe, and so just kind of comparing notes and comparing methods would have been useful, but we'll try.
Are you folks familiar with the volunteer monitoring listserv?
Yeah, but that's national, right?
It is national.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure you were familiar with it, because sometimes you might get a good idea from that, or you might want to post a question, how other people around the country dealt with a certain issue or something like that. I just wanted to see if you knew about it.
Yeah, and with what he's trying to do through the state board and through these seminars is to kind of facilitate more communication between the groups. So
Yeah. So thinking, after I get off the call, I might just post a message to the volunteer monitoring listeners, just sort of saying whose snapshots and how much QA QC are you doing. It might be interesting to find out if other people are similar or not.
That would be great information for us to have.
Yeah.
This is in Morro Bay. I have a kind of a quality assurance question. I'm just curious how you guys handle it. I think it applies more to first flush, but the hold time for pH and for filtering all metals is really short, like 15 minutes or something like that, which I'm assuming you guys don't meet either. And are you flagging your data in some way for metal and for pH because that whole time's matter, or are you figuring we're doing the best we can and that's good enough?
We're doing total metals as opposed to, we're doing total metals.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not actually filtering the samples.
Okay.
Which program is that?
With the Morro Bay National Estuary Program.
No, but I mean the total metals. Is that Urban Watch, First Flush?
This is First Flush.
Okay.
And we'll measure pH on site, and so
Okay.
we don't have to do that.
Are you using just pH paper? Or are you using meters?
The strips.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank everybody for joining today. It's been eye-opening.
Thank you, Melanie, for hosting.
Melanie.
Thank you so